Out of all the promised film adaptations of beloved video games, I'm actually pleasantly surprised that PlayStation finally released a movie based on Uncharted. Unfortunately, it managed to disappoint me, which is something I did expect. I know this movie went through a ton of directors and rewrites, but I had some hope that it would be good at the very least, but no. Okay, it's not the worst video game movie, hell, it's not even the worst PlayStation game movie, Heavenly Sword, but I really wanted it to be so much better. The film begins in medias res, much like the games, and it tries to open with a promising hook when we see Nate, played by Tom Holland, hanging out the back of a cargo plane just like the iconic scene from Uncharted 3. Sadly, I started to nitpick it within the first 10 seconds when I noticed that the ring wasn't even tied through the leather lanyard properly. That's probably the biggest metaphor for the movie. It shows an attempt, but everything is just strangely off. We also get some backstory where Nate and his brother Sam establish themselves as treasure hunters by breaking into a museum to steal an iconic map of Magellan's voyage which could help lead them in the direction to the Lost Fleet. The two are soon caught, and Sam is forced to leave the orphanage, but he gives Nate the ring and promises to eventually return. In the present, Nate works as a bartender while also stealing from wealthy patrons to make ends meet. Pickpocketing in this movie is pure BS, by the way, as characters somehow steal valuable items from each other without even making so much as physical contact. Anyways, Nate is met by a man named Victor Sullivan, played by Mark Wahlberg, and this is probably the biggest issue with the film. Wahlberg is a fine actor on his own, but I never believed for a minute that he is supposed to be Sully. He doesn't have the iconic mustache and gruff voice that the character is known for, and he is so different in personality that he might as well be a completely different character. Tom Hanks from Sully looked more like Sully than Mark Wahlberg, which is an unrelated property, by the way. So he tells Nate that he was once acquainted with Sam, and this is somehow just enough incentive to get Nate on board with the heist he's planning. Specifically, he plans to rob an auction house as it is selling a jeweled cross which works as a key when paired with a second. This scene does bear a striking resemblance to the one from Uncharted 4, but with none of the thrills. After escaping with the cross, Nate and Sully travel to Barcelona where they meet Chloe, played by Sophia Ali, and they join forces right after attempting to rob each other, and they eventually find the location of the lost ships. That's the most significant issue I have with the movie. The characters never seem like they want to work together, as they always try to betray each other or jump ship at the first sign of trouble. The game's always had an honor among thieves mentality, so it's really strange as to why they would want to continue working together when they can't even seem to establish trust. The same can be said for the two main villains of the film, who are a generic wealthy bad guy named Santiago Moncada, played by Antonio Banderas, and a mercenary named Joe Braddock, played by Tati Gabriel. Neither of the two characters were all that memorable, to be honest. Moncada was a bit too one-note, and just came across as a typical evil guy who does evil things, going as far as to kill his own father because he wanted to donate the family fortune. He had some intrigue as a character as time went on, but we never get any fulfillment, as Braddock suddenly slits his throat and takes over as the main antagonist. Through some backwards logic that I wasn't convinced by, she now owns all of his property, and even Moncada's henchmen are cool with it. None of them react with even the slightest bit of shock, so it just feels like the film is missing some much-needed context. Braddock isn't even that interesting of a character, and she's pretty much just a blander flavor of Nadine Ross. Her design is cool, but I barely remembered who she was by the time the film was over. Speaking of missing context, I have an unresearched theory that the film was supposed to be longer, but had several scenes removed to fit a more reasonable runtime. There's a scene where Nate and Sully have to sneak onto the cargo plane, and they do so by hiding in the trunk of Moncada's red sports car when it was heavily guarded the last time we saw it. We never see how they got inside without alerting everyone, so it's just a bit jarring to see the plot progress this way. Also, remember the line from the trailer when Sully says, "Aren't you a bit young to be a bartender?" Well, that's been cut. There was also a brief scene in the trailer where Chloe is shown underwater in a red bikini, but no such scene exists in the final film. In fact, Chloe is absent for a good portion of the movie, as Nate gives her a set of false coordinates to throw her off the trail when she tries to betray him for the third time in a row. I don't know if there was a scheduling conflict, or if there was a last-minute rewrite, but it felt like there could have been a lot more to this character. The action scenes were surprisingly kind of dull, aside from the final scene where Nate fights several thugs on a ship that's being airlifted. Yeah, it was full of CG effects, but it was actually very entertaining and held my interest. Watching a helicopter get shot down by a ship cannon was honestly kind of awesome. It was also the only time when the iconic theme played in a satisfying way, so there was at least some care given to the source material. We also see a Naughty Dog sticker at one point, and a neon sign at the bar that reads "Kitty Got Wet," which is one of Nate's iconic phrases. There may have been a few additional references, but I don't remember seeing anything that referred to other games. Even Nolan North himself made a cameo in the film where he jokingly refers to the cargo plane and how he did the same thing once. He also narrates the official movie novel by S.T. Perry on Audible, so that's also pretty cool. Even though there is some care towards the source material, it hardly shows given the choice of casting and heavy reliance on recreating past scenes from the games. In terms of how fans and newcomers would enjoy it, I think most fans would feel let down by it, while others can enjoy it if they can suspend their disbelief. To be honest, when I was at the theater, there was a man in the row in front of me who was literally snoring throughout several scenes. As funny as that was, I think he is more of the minority as opposed to the majority of the audience. I think I'd be more forgiving of it if it were just another fan-made movie as opposed to a multi-million-dollar production. I remember I was home one night, and as I was drinking a pack of wine coolers, I decided to marathon a bunch of Uncharted films made by independent filmmakers, and you know what? Most of them aren't half bad. They incorporate a lot of action-packed fights, some witty dialogue, and fun scenes where the characters get to unravel clues with the same enthusiasm as seen in the games. There was even one film that actually cast Nathan Fillion as Drake, and after I saw him in Serenity, I always thought he would be the best casting choice. That being said, I'll probably get the movie when it comes out on DVD for my collection, but other than that, like the treasure itself, the film was completely lost on me.